Welcome to this explainer from Forge College. So, in our last lesson, we focused on designing the integration approach. We laid out the big picture. But today, we're taking off our high-level architecture hats, strapping on our hard hats, and grabbing our engineering schematics. Let's be real for a second. An architecture diagram alone is definitely not going to stop a hacker. Honestly, it mostly just shows them exactly where the front door is. So today, we're taking those big picture designs and turning them into literal, bulletproof smart contract blueprints by mapping out our access flows.
Here's our blueprint for today. We'll start with from design to blueprints, move into policies versus access flows, and then talk about spotting integration checkpoints. After that, we'll look at some real-world examples, queuing withdrawals and executing safely. Finally, we'll wrap up with the developer's action plan. Let's jump in.
Section 1. From design to blueprints.
Okay, so it is officially time to leave the dangerous, albeit, kind of thrilling, habit of cowboy coding in the dust. You wouldn't try to build a functional spaceship from a napkin sketch, right? Well, you can't code a secure smart contract from a high-level box diagram either. You actually have to translate your integration surface map into a precise, stepwise access flow. We're talking about mapping a literal program trace. Doing this is what prevents those nasty project-ruining surprises before you even write your very first line of Solidity.
Moving on to Section 2, Policies versus Access Flows.
We really need to clarify the massive difference here, because mixing these up is a huge trap. On the left, a policy is abstract. Admins can withdraw. That's great for a product spec sheet, but it's terrible for a developer. On the right, an access flow is a concrete, stepwise progression. Think of a nightclub. The policy is a super vague, VIPs only. But the access flow, that's the specific sequence. The guest walks to the door, hands their ID to the bouncer shines a flashlight on it, checks a physical list, and only then physically unhooks the velvet rope. Without that exact flow, your security policy is literally just a wish.
Section 3. Spotting integration checkpoints. So you might be wondering, where exactly do all these security checks actually happen? Well, that brings us to the integration checkpoint. Remember the bouncer from a minute ago? This is that exact, literal moment. The bouncer checks your ID. It's the concrete location in your code where your policy is actually enforced, observed, or tested. It is the exact spot where your high-level security integration and your low-level implementation finally converge. Now, these checkpoints typically take one of 4 forms in your code. First up, function entry guards. Think of your standard role-based modifiers. Second, state transition assertions. These are basically postconditions that check if a state actually updated correctly after an action. Third, we have cross-contract boundaries. Anytime you hand execution control over to another contract, you absolutely need a checkpoint there. And fourth, event emissions. These act as crucial audit hooks for off-chain monitoring services that are watching the blockchain for weird anomalies.
All right, Section 4. Let's look at the real world, queuing withdrawals.
Let's map out a real high-stakes Web3 scenario. Say an admin needs to queue a withdrawal, but your system has a mandatory 48-hour time lock. We map out what we call the queue flow sequentially. Step 1, validate the parameters. Step 2, check the admin role. Step 3, calculate the exact release timestamp. Step 4, emit a withdrawal queued event. Boom. Now we know exactly where our checkpoints live. We have an entry guard at Step 2 for the role check and an observability checkpoint at Step 4 with that event emission.
But right, this forces us to ask a really critical question. What actually happens if something fails? A good blueprint always documents the failure paths too. If that parameter check in Step 1 fails, does the transaction revert gracefully? Documenting these failure paths ensures your smart contract has safe defaults when things go wrong. And trust me, in Web3, things inevitably will go wrong.
Section 5. Real world, executing safely.
Okay, so the 48-hour time delay has finally passed, and it's time to actually move the money. This is where things get truly dangerous. Notice how meticulously we sequence this execute flow. Read the entry. Verify the time lock has actually expired. Verify it hasn't already been executed. Mark it as executed. Safely transfer the funds. And finally, emit the event. The order here isn't just a polite suggestion. It's literally the difference between a secure contract and waking up to a catastrophic headline on crypto Twitter.
The absolute most crucial point of this entire flow is your idempotence checkpoint. That means marking the state as executed before you make the external transfer. Idempotence basically just means that no matter how many times a hacker tries to hammer this function, it will only process the effect once. By writing this state change before the transfer, you stop reentrancy attacks cold. If a malicious contract tries to loop back in, the system sees it's already marked true and just blocks the attack entirely.
And finally, Section 6.
the developer's action plan. Let's tie all of these blueprints directly back to the work you are doing right now in your capstone for building a secure access control system. Every single flow step has to map to a specific integration checkpoint, which then corresponds to a strict verification action. Queuing maps to a role modifier and a unit test. Executing maps to an idempotence guard and a replay test. Transferring funds maps to the safe transfer pattern and a fuzz test. You are basically building yourself a bulletproof checklist. By meticulously documenting these traces and checkpoints, you drastically reduce ambiguity for your engineering team. And honestly, even better, you give automated static analysis tools exactly what they need to protect you. Scanners like Slither require precise signals. When you map your access flow, you give those tools a totally clear instruction. Hey, make sure every single cross-contract transfer happens after a state update.
So, by putting in the work to document these flows, you systematically eliminate ambiguity and lock down exactly where money moves in your system. You're taking all the guesswork out of smart contract security, which allows you to navigate these access control and authorization flaws systematically, safely, and like a true professional.
If you want to dive deeper into these Web3 security blueprints, head over to forge.college to learn more. But right now, before you write even one more line of code, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Take a hard look at your current architecture. Which of your high-risk cross-contract calls is sitting there, completely vulnerable right now, just because its access flow hasn't been properly mapped? Thanks for joining me on this explainer from Forge College, and happy building.